I like that area a lot.
So I guess my question would be, Alex, is you were born and raised in Virginia Beach, correct?
Yep.
And then you went from Virginia Beach to Vermont.
Yeah, I know. The next place has got to have a V in it, right?
No, no, no. The only reason I was asking is I'm trying to get a size of what city size you find comfortable with. And just hear me out. It may seem like weird logic. For me, when I grade a city, I'm grading a city against three cities. And they're because that's where my life experience has been. My family's in New York City, so there's one. Two would be grading it against a Chicago, right? Because I grew up there. I spent many, decades there from second grade until I moved down in 2008, except for the 4 years I went out of state for school, for college. And then the last would be DC, right? Because of my proximity to DC. So when I grade cities, right, I'm looking if they can hold water, not necessarily in size and population, but as far as diversity, arts, activities, things to do, active communities, things of that nature. So that's why I ask where people are from. So if nothing against Virginia Beach, but if you go from Virginia Beach, a very heavy military based city, right, and then you go to Nashville, you're going to find a very vibrant, young, growing, new, shiny kind of city with lots of activity. And provided you like country music and you like barbecue, they've got a good sporting team. They got a good hockey team, right? They got a decent football team. Like you'll be enamored, right? Um, if you're from a Chicago, a New York, something like that, or a DC, you may find that Nashville may lack the diversity of museums and things and some cultural things, right? And theater and things of that nature. So great city. The state in general is a nice place to live. Williamson County, which is where Nissan's headquarters are, down in Franklin is like, being in Montgomery County or being in Loudoun County or being in, DuPage County in Illinois, right? There are certainly very affluent areas with plenty of things to do. But you've got a decent airport. That's a big thing for me with the amount of travel I do. Is I want to be at an airport where I can get anywhere in one flight, and you can do that out of Nashville. I think it's a super fun city. It's architecture there is good. The housing market's exploded there for a host of reasons, but it's a fun city to be in by all means.
Yeah. I've been there a few times. Always enjoyed
Yep,
it.
yep,
Yeah, same.
By the way, 3 seconds, guys.
got it.
All right, there we are. Yeah, so thanks, Bart. If anyone was tuning in there, was wondering what it was like to live around the Nashville area. So Bart's running us through the world.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
is.
And then
welcome.
maybe the last thing on that point is, uh, you know, I consider myself a Chicagoan more than I do a New Yorker, regardless of my place of birth. Um, and certainly, Jeff, you'll appreciate this. When you get back into the Midwest, you just get Midwestern people, right? And they're
Oh yeah,
they're they're
yeah.
they're kind and they're friendly. And when they ask you how your day is, they really mean it and they hold doors open, right? So there's some things, and obviously being in kind of the mecca of transition in the world, which is Washington D.C. area, right? You don't kind of get some of that warm and fuzzy feeling that you do out of the Midwesterner. So
Oh my God, no.
Vermont is a beautiful part of the country, Alex, but I'm sure you'll find lots of friends that you can make very easily if you were to head west, as it were.
Yeah. Vermont's
Yeah,
like
I love
that
that
too,
area.
by the way. When people ask you
Yep.
how's your day, they want to hear it. That was a surprising one for me moving from Virginia.
Exactly, exactly. Right. You're always on guard and you don't need to be anymore.
That's right.
I don't
Well,
know.
things have changed a little bit since I moved up here, but we'll save that for another time. Um,
So real quickly, I went to University of Houston. My mom worked for Shell Chemical and got transferred. And the funny thing down there, when people would ask me how the people were, I'd say, in the city of Chicago, if somebody asked you for the time, you got to be concerned that they might take your watch. You go to Houston and you ask somebody what time it is, and they give you their watch, right? It was that kind of a dichotomy, right? It's not much different. So.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's a little bit of the change we've had here.
Yep.
Yep. But anyway, Bart, welcome to Dealer Refresh.
Yeah,
Glad to
welcome.
be here. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah. Well, we've hosted a few other of your coworkers, and we've specifically focused on the transportation side as it relates to dealers. But
Yeah,
you're coming from the OEM side of it all, so
correct.
we're hoping to learn some things today. I think that's why
I'll
we
do my
titled it the way we did.
I'll do my best. It's certainly an environment that's near and dear to me, which I know we'll get into as to why that is in the time to come.
Well, start things off. Can you tell us a little bit about your career, about yourself?
So certainly, I guess I'll start in something that might be a little bit surprising, at least for a guy in my role today. Um, my last job I had prior to moving into the car industry, which was a time in a far galaxy, many years away behind us, before gray hair. I got a job as a truck driver. And the series of events that got me to that were rather interesting. I'd gotten out of college. I sat in an office. I realized I couldn't sit in an office. And I started driving a truck. I became an over-the-road operator. I bought a truck, and I've trucked in every single state with the exception of South Dakota. And what I did learn from being an owner-operator in my mid-20s was never a better way to get paid and see the entire country, which was tremendously fun. The other thing that I learned is that if I was going to try to have some semblance of a home life with a partner that didn't want to be on the road, that I was probably not going to remain on the road. So I had gotten rid of my big red Peterbilt. No jokes in that one. It literally was a Pete 379 Caterpillar engine, and I'm like, what am I going to do next? I had an affinity for automobiles. Um, my mom used to tell me as a young child that I could tell my older sister her own belongings. So, and I never had kind of a problem. I love being around people. I'm an extrovert to the max, and I enjoy selling things that I enjoy and find good value in. So, going from being an over-road driver into the next business line that you could do where you spend as little time as home as possible is go to an automobile dealership. So back
You
in
could have
those
flown
days,
airplanes.
that's right. Yeah. Back in those days, they're not the more friendly hours. It was, you worked 3 9 to 9s every week, right? Jeff, you know what I'm talking about. And so anyways, I just fell in love with kind of that situation. A little bit of an instant gratification kind of personality, and going in every day and knowing that I had the opportunity to sell a car or sell cars was extremely exciting to me, and I enjoyed it. So I started selling cars in Chicago, and then I worked at a dealer group for a short period of time, and then I wound up transitioning back out into the western suburbs of Chicago. And there's a Lyle Auto Plaza campus out in Lyle, Illinois, where I'd work at the Volvo store there for very many years, and had developed a wonderful affinity for the brand, and worked under great ownership, and their sons I'm still in contact with today, and not surprisingly moved their cars as well. And then in 2008, the Audi and Volkswagen group they were already in the process, but had kind of finalized some processes to move down to the Northern Virginia area. I had taken a step out of the retail automotive world and had went to a corporate sales job. And I saw this job posting at Audi for a retail performance manager, and had a lot of friends from Volvo that had gone over there. So I kind of had some people there as well, and wound up starting at Audi in Herndon, Virginia, as my first stint with an OEM. So I spent a little bit over 2 years at Audi, and really learned a lot coming from a retail environment, going into a headquarters corporate German environment. It was quite a learning lesson.
I like how you throw the German in there. Yep.
Yeah, I am my key on my last name is Schuster, but it was learning. It was a lot of learning and a lot of skills and things that I picked up and credit a lot the leadership there and the people that I work for. Really kind of I consider myself to be a very good retail car guy. Um, I learned under a general manager, a gentleman named Ken Kowal, who is tremendous and taught me more about the car business than I think I would have ever known, trying to haphazardly find my way through it. And wound up working for great leadership there. There was an opportunity a little bit down the road to go to Fisker 1.0 and worked there and enjoyed it during the run. And obviously, we had some financial concerns. And then with Hurricane Sandy, the last of my Fiskers were underwater at Port Elizabeth. And when you wholesale cars for a living and you ain't gotten into wholesale, not too good for the career path. So the great thing about working there is I worked for a gentleman named Matt Malafantano, who happened to be my regional vice president when I was at Volvo in the Midwest in sales. And he told me an amazing thing of working at a startup, and it'll kind of bring us full circle as we talked about AutoSled, was I would learn more working for him for the time that Fisker was alive, if it continued on, or even in a short period of time, because I was absolutely the only guy on the East Coast. There was nobody but me. I was the marketing guy. I was the retail guy. I was the wholesale guy. I was, the everything guy. I was the problem guy. I was the sales reporting guy. I was the allocation guy. And,
Jeez.
When you think about how many different roles one would have to go through at kind of a normal sized car company, right? That could be 10 years of rotations. Mm-hmm. And I got to do all that at once, really, because there was nobody else to do it. But and again, working under somebody who really knew the business well, it turned out to be just a fantastic opportunity. And then at the unwind of Fisker, not too long after that, I found myself at Nissan. So kind of quickly at Nissan, I started in a field role, calling on dealerships in upstate New York. And then shortly thereafter, returned back into the Northern Virginia market and to kind of do the same thing in more of a senior market. And then after that, I went to headquarters, which kind of brings me closer to what we're going to talk about today, and took a role as a took a role as a distribution manager. And there I was responsible for 2 regions for Nissan, and then the 4 regions for Infinity Distribution. Spent a little bit over 13 months there, learning a completely new world, right? In theory, I thought I understood distribution. As a retail guy, I ordered lots of cars. As a field guy, I wholesaled plenty of cars. But really, that was barely the tip of the iceberg of what goes on when you start talking about car flow and distribution and things of that nature.
Well, that's the first curiosity we've got here, and maybe our first learning, because there's so many of us who,
right?
That's about the extent. Maybe not the wholesale side as much from your world, but really, order a car from the manufacturer. Okay, it gets built. All right, where's my MSO, and when does it get to port, and when's it going to be on my lot? And that's about all we know.
Yep.
So I assume it's a little more complex than that.
It is a little bit more complex than that. I mean, we can make it down to the kindergarten version or the kindergarten version of it. But yeah, I was, I'll tell you, so I work for, I know I'm dropping names here, but these are men who have been monumental in my learnings in life. So I feel kind of due. There's now the director of distribution, a gentleman named Randy Hutto. And when he interviewed me for the job, he asked me, why is a slick sales guy like you want to come to distribution, right? And the reality is that I want to still continue to grow and be the best car guy I can be, right? And the best car guy I can be is to have a puzzle that's got lots of pieces put together, right? I don't want to be that 5 or 6 piece puzzle that's very easy to get together that, people 2 and 3 years old, little kids can put together. I want that horrible 1,000-piece puzzle that, is half black and doesn't line up really good, right? And the more that I learn and the more I continue to grow, the bigger a benefactor I am in any and all circumstances, right? And certainly, my experience in my role now has enabled me to have meaningful conversations with people that are in oversight positions for larger dealer groups, right, where we become the sole single source provider. It's enabled me to continue to have conversations in dealerships with the pain points they have, both from their own acquisition side to even the vehicle delivery side from the manufacturer end, which we hope to solve for as well. And then even from the manufacturer's concerns, right? COVID did a lot. It changed the market dramatically, right? And, we can
Changed
talk
quite a few
about,
markets.
right. And I'm sure we'll talk about what happened as far as capacity and mobile parking spaces and things of that nature.
You better believe COVID is on our list of questions here.
Yeah, it's tremendous. I mean, it did a lot. And in certain systems, outside of the bad things, it created some tremendous change, right? It really moved things forward years, if not decades, both from the retail front and selling cars for dealerships, right? But even to sourcing and things of that nature. So I know we'll get there. And then I told Randy, I said, I want to really kind of grow myself as big as possible and learn as much as I can. And then the other thing that was very wonderful and rewarding for me was that the group of people that typically worked in that department were very new in their careers, analysts or specialists as they were. And, me coming in with a very different background. Not a lot of people with retail background find themselves working in the OEM side. That's my responsibility to continue to grow, right, those underneath me. I always want to try to train the person that's going to replace me, right? And that's the best way to do it. And then from there, headed back out in a marketing role for the Mid-Atlantic region and then into the regional general manager region. We wound up closing that region, and for all good business reasons, I don't fault that being done. It was a smart business decision. And then shortly thereafter, I had changed some things on my LinkedIn. And David Spro, one of our founders, who interestingly enough, when I was a field guy, was managing a Nissan store in Stafford, Virginia, and also a neighboring Toyota store, had sent me a note on LinkedIn, and we'd become close over the years and over the time that I was in my role and he was in his, and said, hey, I'm kind of interested in what happened, but more importantly, I've got a job for you. And honestly, that was exactly how I wound up here at AutoSled. September, which we talked about before, was my 2-year anniversary with the brand. And it's been a meteoric rise for the organization. It's been an absolute wonderful time to be able to marry still working some on the retail side with dealers and dealer partners and groups that I've dealt with over the years, forging my way into the OEM service business. Also in my title now contains some governmental work, which we're starting to peel back the layers of the onion. And I don't think there's a bigger onion in the world to peel back more layers than it is when you're trying to deal with the government. But we'll take that strategically and accordingly as necessary. And, it's been, the organization is up 10x in volume from the time that I've started. I know David has shared, and Dan as well, the company is very healthy and growing. We've just added, I think 2-3 new people now. I'll be adding a third soon. And, we've got a tremendous amount of support for our backers and our board members. And, for the little startup that could, we're doing a tremendous job. And it's been, I love the organization, not just for what we do, but because of the people that I get to operate and work with on a day-to-day basis, which makes it so much better. So I think that's probably enough about me and my background.
Well, that
pretty
was
extensive.
Yeah. And we're huge fans of AutoSled, so hearing
thank you.
The health is good to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, Bart, can you give us a little more insight into what happens after a car is built and how it moves to a dealership's lot?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, without getting into how actually a car gets built. So once it's built, there's kind of I guess the best way to start is, once it comes off the assembly line, then, we're looking at logistics immediately, right? And now we're thinking of logistics a little bit bigger than just obviously being trucks. So depending on where the vehicle is being manufactured and obviously where it needs to get to, we're talking about going by sea, right? Is a huge one. With many manufacturers producing overseas, obviously, Japanese product is pretty simple. We can use that as a good example. We could use any other brand, right, that produces outside of the USA. So now we're working in theory with kind of our first logistics partner, right? In many circumstances at the OEM level, they'll have what I would consider to be a supervisory logistics partner. And they're going to be responsible kind of for everything soup to nuts from the time it comes off the line until the time it winds up at the dealership. But along those stages of the process, right, some different things can happen. So if we take a C example, we can sail cars regardless of where it's come or coming from and to. If we want to take a sidebar there, right, as a result of COVID, and even now as a result of some shortage in water, right, we find that part of the car flow situation being hampered.
Yeah.
The
So
Panama Canal.
you got Panama. There was also, you had pirates off of Ethiopia for a time. LA being backed up after COVID.
Yep.
All those
Yeah, I mean, even now
challenges.
we're
Yeah.
suffering in Panama because the canal is at 50% of its water, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
now you have car manufacturers that are going short sea from Mexico or going long sea from other parts, from the Orient that are crossing through to get to East Coast landings, so they don't have to truck or rail across the country. Are shipping vessels that are 50% capacity, so they don't have the berth, right? They're not deep enough into the water.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
So this has created, what this does is it puts a lot of vehicles in places that they shouldn't wind up, right? Which certainly for somebody like me is tremendous opportunity, right? I mean, I hate to say it, we love Calamity, right? Calamity in working as a backup carrier is the best thing in the world, right? It means that you're getting too many cars, surges of inventory, vehicles finding themselves in places they shouldn't be. And that's a place, because of the nimbleness of our organization, we can serve manufacturers very dynamically, very efficiently, and very expeditiously. So let's say our vessel now lands, right? So we've got that handled. That vessel could be owned by the manufacturer. It could be owned by a logistics company. It could be owned by a third party. And then we're going to get to a port of call someplace, right? And then at port of call, we kind of have two options now. The first option of which is we can very simply unload these vehicles, get them through whatever processing needs to be done, and we can put them on a truck, and we can truck them direct to Jeff Mercedes and Alex Maserati, right? And that's a simple
Alex
flow.
Ferrari, by the way.
Excuse me. I had part of the Italian thing right. And then we could do that, or we could now go to rail, right? There's a fair amount of rail capacity that's done. The rail part of the business is very interesting, and I certainly don't consider myself to be an expert in it, but it is interesting insofar as you're kind of buying space, or you're buying the commodity some years in advance, right? So if a rail line has got 1,000 parking spaces on rail cars on one train, and they can run that train so many times, you know how much commodity you have. So there again, when we have circumstances of vehicles winding up out of place, surges of inventory, fleet orders, vessels not being able to run full, that creates more havoc. And now wherever the system begins to build pressure, the relief point is always going to be through truck, right? Because that's really where the additional capacity could be, right? So I know we'll get to talking about shortage of carriers and that kind of stuff, which I think is not necessarily all the truth. So now we've got this car that was built by the manufacturer. We can have a couple of these pressure points along the way, but let's say in a simple scenario, the vessel gets to the port. Now the dealer sees his car at port, and that port in certain circumstances could be 8 to 10 miles from the dealership, and they wonder why it sits for 3 weeks. Familiar scenario?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So to kind of close the loop on the truck side, eventually the truck comes and gets the car, and eventually it shows up at Alex's or Jeff's stores, and we're happy, right? The next part could be we got to port, and we are now railing, right? Obviously, you can move a lot more cars at one time via rail. An Automax car, which is the creme de la creme of auto moving rail cars, can be loaded two or three decks tall, right? So you can get up to 22 units, right, if not more, depending on the size of the vehicles and what you're moving. So then that becomes really the next port, or the next point of rest goes into rail. Rail then can go into a rail head, and then obviously truck is going to be your final point of your final miles, if you were. Also, from manufacturing here in the States, you have a lot of rail to, right? You have cars getting railed out of manufacturing facilities in Tennessee and Mississippi and South Carolina, right? That are getting railed to more advantageous places where they're dropping those then at railheads, and then we have truck. The important thing, which I come back to, is it's always truck, right? For many reasons, dealers aren't allowed to go to railheads and ports to go get their vehicles, and some very good reasons. And we all know why. But all that being said, right, so, now we've built that car, and now that car has finally showed up, kind of working through those kind of different legs. If we're Alex and we have the one Ferrari that came off the line, we may throw that in a container, right, and ship that. We may put that in air cargo, and we may ship that. So obviously air cargo is really, maybe if they're shipping McLarens or they're shipping Bugattis, I don't know. We don't ship those cars, so I can't speak for how their logistics is set up. But in general, I think that kind of gives you a big swath. What the dealer gets concerned about, and the dealer's pain points, are really the pressure points that get built up through the supply chain, right? And it's not that the manufacturer doesn't want to get you your car as quick as they can. They don't get paid until your car leaves its final point of rest. Once it gets on that truck and pulls out of that last facility, whatever that is, if that's a port or a railhead or the manufacturing facility, once it gets on that truck, that dealership gets billed for that car, right? And that's the way that they get paid. So they want that car to you as fast as possible. As I said, it's where the supply chain gets stress put on it, that they have to be nimble and they have to change from what they would normally otherwise do.
So earlier you mentioned COVID had some impact on things. And obviously,
Yep.
everyone probably watching the show experienced that in some way, shape, or form. What are some things that COVID might have done that we didn't see in the headlines or experience directly as dealers? Or
Sure. I mean, I think for me, the place I always want to start, because there's still plenty of, retail blood in my system, was, I'm very appreciative of the fact that every dealer principal, every shareholder, every finance manager, every sales manager, and every salesperson had the opportunity to earn what they earned during COVID, right? They had a tremendous earning potential during those times for market conditions. And, for selling cars for over a decade, it's a rare occurrence when somebody walks in the store and says, I'd love to pay you what that window sticker says. So I'm happy I'm very happy that they got that. I don't wish another pandemic on anybody, but I do like the fact that that everybody through that, through the front end of those dealerships. And by the way, the service department did tremendous too, because there was a lot more service going on because cars were no longer disposable. Right. Mm-hmm. So it makes me very happy to know that all the dealer principals, and from then on down, right, they had some tremendous years. From the transportation side of the business, which I think is probably what we're a little bit more keyed off of here, and some of the things that necessarily didn't hit headlines, was, we had a lot of asset-based carriers that had, a lot of inventory of their own inventory, right? A new car semi is a couple $100,000 investment. And, when you're used to moving 10,000 cars a month and now you're moving 1,000 cars a month, it creates some problems, right? So, we didn't hear about the fact that, we're not going to sit and have 100 9-car haulers sitting there at idle, right? Many companies, unfortunately, lost multitudes of drivers that found other occupations that, were more COVID resistant, maybe not COVID proof, or went into other lines of work where there was more surety that there was going to be a steady paycheck. Because none of us knew how long this thing was going to go on. Nobody knew when manufacturing facilities were going to start and continue to work. There was only one manufacturing facility that I'm aware of that didn't stop through COVID. Nobody knew what was going to happen. And at some point, if I'm a large asset-based carrier, and as much as I want to take care of and be responsible and a good steward of my employees, at some point the money is going to run out. So, I think that there was a lot of compression and availability by loss of people power, right? Now, there's that, right? And then there's kind of your owner operator side, right? And, that's really where we are as an automotive organization, as a logistics provider, is, the majority of everything we do may be done through larger dispatching organizations, but we are a brother and brother, a mom and pop, organization. So are the majority of our carriers, right? It may be Bart Trucking and, Alex is a brother and he's got a truck, and Jeff's a brother and he's got a truck, right? But, we've got, real people that we really know, and carriers that were very nimble and have substantially lower operating costs because of the size of their equipment, right? Running an F-250 or an F-350 in a 3-car wedge or a 5-car hauler is a lot less expensive than running a 9-car semi. Mm-hmm. So, so COVID had its impact, and I don't have a study to tell you we lost 20% of our company drivers and we sold off 30% of our 9-car haulers. I don't have that, but what I know is the output of our work, and certainly from our customers, right, which is really the end game, because they see what cars are getting picked up on and seeing what they're delivered. We delivered thousands of cars last month, and I was not on point to see every single one of our carriers that picked up what and delivered what, not only on the retail side and the dealer serving side and the AutoSled direct side, but also on the OEM side. So the reality is that, in my opinion, right, was this more mom and pop operation, being very nimble in operation and running on shoestring budgets and very frugal, managed to have a tremendous amount of staying power, right? And we're able to weather the storm, as it were, for the scale of economies, right? Which is really kind of what it comes down to. And, I think at our last count, we were over 11,900 registered and vetted carrier partners that have worked with us. Some certainly are one and dones. Like, we happen to have a car that was going from Vermont to San Diego and they had an empty parking space. But I'll certainly tell you, from the OEM side of the business that I work on, there's probably 30 or 40 carriers that I call on a regular basis that I know their names, I know their wives' names, I know their home situation, right? And, I don't get that right out of some of the larger organizations. I do have some companies that have, 9-car haulers that are, around 20 a piece, and I know most of them and their drivers too. But I think that was really kind of where the big contraction came. And, the manufacturers too, right, were slow to return. Supply chain issues were part of it. Obviously everybody knew about the chip thing, right? That was a part of it. Mm-hmm. But the bigger thing was we couldn't get plastic parts. We couldn't get door handles and door panels and screws and things like that, right? The chips are what made the headlines. It was, trying to get some cloth to go over a seat or leather to go over a steering wheel, right? All that stuff was, in short supply. So the manufacturers had their time and slowly ramped up. As a part of that, as this process gets restarted, it'll be interesting now to study over the coming years that, have manufacturers decided to slow production at the sake of curtailing incentive spend, right? Or do we go back to full production and work through incentive spend, or do we continue to have some production controls and work on spending less money on incentives and advertising and subventing lease payments and APRs, and allow it to try to find a true market support for the brand and the model? right? So some very interesting things that we'll see kind of unfold in these years to come.
Is there anyone on the short list right now of the OEMs that are giving you any indication that production is still ramping up and saying we need your help in getting more of these cars to dealerships?
For sure. I don't want to back myself into a sticky wicket here. So I'm had a very good meeting with a major manufacturer this week who has some immediate needs. I'm obviously working with a large OEM now, which probably was not a challenge for you guys to track down. And then in some further conversations with also some domestics that we've done some work for sporadically, but trying to get that the the need, right? The need is for the manufacturers, goes back to some of the more painful things for 9-car haulers to do, right? That really is kind of the wonderful area to be able to operate in. And, you know, when a big truck picks up a load, they want to pick up a load and they want to go to one place, right? If you pick up 9 cars, the last thing you want to do is make 9 stops. So listen, there's a tremendous need for these asset-based carriers, right? Because they've got the fleet, they've got the commodity, if you will, they have the parking spaces. But we hope to continue to leverage the enormous amount of opportunity and, you know, inventory surges, fleet allocations, areas where it's harder to serve. Maybe in your neck of the woods, Alex. I deal with a large dealer group up there that were their sole transport provider, right? In addition to that, short haul stuff, stuff that's going 50 miles or less out of a rail ramp that's in a major metro, right? So I think there's plenty of work to be done, and there's plenty of opportunities. Obviously, I want to get as much of that for our organization, and I want to serve it with a sense of immediacy, right? And not have dealers, screaming about why their car sits at a place 10 miles away and it's there for 2 or 3 weeks. And we do a really good job of solving those pain points, and that's what I continue to hope to grow in my responsibilities here coming in the years to come.
What about this year? Is anything going on? Any trends? Anything worth noting?
So certainly for I'm sitting, I do see that production levels across multiple manufacturers are ramping. I don't get automotive news anymore, right? I don't get the daily rag, as it were. But I don't know really kind of what they're called, what the SAR number is this year, right? I know
They're saying it's going to be down slightly.
Okay, so I don't know where that's slightly from what.
I'm trying to think. What was it? Does anyone out there know?
I mean, we had years where we were 18, 19, like some crazy years.
Yeah, I want to say it's somewhere in
it was a while ago. 12 to 15.
Right. Okay, so let's just pretend it's going to be 12 this year, right? If it's 12 and if it was 12, then yeah, exactly, Bill, I get it. If it was 12 and let's say a good year was 17 and a half,
yep.
Right? There's still a tremendous shortfall from where we were. Now, where they want to be, where they want to go, right? That goes into another department of every car manufacturer, and that number, just like every dealership, is graded at as well as what is your market share, right? And there's people that got a lot more brass on their collar than I do that make those decisions, that sit always higher in a building than I've ever sat. And I won't pretend to know what their thoughts are. But I know the drivers, right? The drivers are that every car manufacturer wants to have their fair share, their undue fair share of market share. And you can get that through extremely attractive product, right? You build great cars that people really want and come after. That's a great way of solving the problem. You put enough into the market where you force your dealers to sell hard, right? Maybe not such a great way to do it. Or you work through incentive spend, right, to find a way to make it further attractive to the consumer. And those are kind of maybe the three legs of the stool, as it were. But whichever leg is going to take over and make the other legs shorten or lengthen along with them, that I can't probably speak to with any accurate type of assessment.
Fair enough. Well, definitely a little off the cuff question here. You got any
Okay.
crazy stories in relation to some nutty things that might have happened in shipping?
Oh, of course we do. I guess the first question is, did Dan and David, our founders, share any of those with you?
I don't
No,
recall.
they've always been pretty serious when they come on. We've had a little fun, but
Right.
we haven't gotten any crazy ones.
Okay. I mean, I have some crazy ones. I have some unfortunate ones. I mean, I think probably the silliest, craziest one, and the only reason why I know it was silly is because it happens to be a vehicle that I'd entered. We had a dealer pick up a vehicle, a carrier pick up a vehicle in Denver at Manheim that was supposed to go 225 miles north, straight up the highway. And then we got record that he decided to drop the vehicle off at Manheim, Nevada. 800 miles away in the wrong direction. So I think that's probably a pretty good one.
Why did
I
he do
think
that?
Yeah, what
I,
possessed him? I guess he just
I,
thought Mannheim.
but just for the record, it was going to a dealership. And
Oh,
nowhere in this dealership's name does it rhyme with Manheim or Vegas or Nevada. It's in Wyoming, in Casper. So there's no way you could put those two together. It doesn't. It can't wordsmith that one. Um,
that's a weird one.
I don't really know. Our bigger concern was making sure that we were able to recover the vehicle, right, and then get it back to its rightful owner. I think that's a good one. Um, I mean, listen, I think another one, which unfortunately just kind of is the nature of the beast. You have damage claims from time to time. It's just a law of averages. So we've seen some very interesting damage claims where people don't realize the height of NVs or transits or things like that.
Hmm.
And the top part of those things are not terribly structurally sound when they hit underpasses.
No.
So and then there's some silly things along the way. You get drivers that make a mistake on a little bumper and want to spray paint the entire bumper and don't even find a good color match when they're spray painting
Oh
the bumper.
wow.
So, fortunately, the way that our system works and the bill of lading process that we use is if there's damage that's not noted on pickup, it's the responsibility of the carrier. We
Okay.
do our best as quickly as possible. Like our requirements when a vehicle shows up not in the condition it was represented at pickup, is all we require of our dealerships is to send us their own pictures and an estimate, and then we're going to take care of them whether we're working in conjunction or not in conjunction with the carrier's insurance. We do a great job of consistently vetting our carrier's insurance, so more times than not, and we deal with really good carriers. I mean, again, I talked to you about some of the silly nightmares. I'll tell you another one on my own fault, right? I won't poke fun at just the carriers. I'll poke fun at myself. We do a lot of vehicles out of a port in Georgia. And when we build loads, there are a lot of car dealerships that have the exact same name, comma city. And in many
Yes.
circumstances, you can have exact same name, comma city, hundreds and hundreds of miles away.
Yeah.
You could have that one in South Florida where I picked the wrong dealer and sent it down to Miami when it was supposed to go to Sarasota. So nobody, myself included, is beyond making mistakes by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, I try my best to try to avoid those now and have put a couple guardrails in the way so I don't repeat that behavior. Those guardrails inherently are me just not doing that work anymore and somebody else doing it who's a little better with attention to detail.
Yeah. Are you guys working with any new technologies that help on the logistics side?
For me, that would really be a better question served to David or to Dan, and then obviously David Darden, our CIO. We're releasing a lot of wonderful internal things that are aiding us in our efficiencies. But one of the really cool things that we've launched that's available to all of our dealer population is our dealer trade tool that lives within our platform. So, as inventory comes on, but even as inventory comes on, right, there's uniqueness, especially when we're talking about, just Mercedes-Benz store and Alex's Ferrari store, right? And with many manufacturers, right, when you get into the more near luxury and luxury manufacturers, they're not allowed to drive dealer trades, right? And obviously we understand the liability of putting, two people behind the car and sending them on their way. But now our dealers are able, and if in trading a car, just hit a button and it gives them two options. Option one is, does the first vehicle have to get to Jeff before we can take Jeff's car to Alex? Or can they work in unison? It pre-populates everything. It does all the pricing, and it's automated. It prevents our dealers from having to enter more vehicles and do more order entry, or even for dealers that we're servicing and doing the administrative work for as well. It allows our operations team to work more efficiently. So that dealer trade could be done for one car or 100 cars. So that's a new piece of technology that we've unrolled that's available to all of our customers now. And then we're working on a lot of kind of load optimization and things that are coming in the future, which I don't want to talk to because I'm probably not the best qualified to do that.
Okay.
Fair enough. Yeah. So on the damages side, I'm just curious, what was going to happen to that driver that, scuffed the bumper and might, need to spray paint the whole thing over, try and cover it up?
Well, I think it comes down to this. You asked about a couple odd one-offs, right? Thankfully, right, we have very few of these incidents per month, right? And very few per year. Listen, I think at some point, because of our requirement for pictures, our bill of ladings are picture intensive. Our carriers are required to take a minimum of 8 pictures. They're required to do an 8-quadrant assessment of the vehicle on either side and 4 quadrants in front and back. They have ample space and notes areas to note any kind of damage and things. So, listen, in a case like that, if the driver doesn't fess up to it, we still have a mechanism, right? We cannot pay them for the move, right? And in a lot of circumstances, you guys would be surprised with as many cars we move, as many repeat carriers that we have. And again, I talked about a couple funny, not funny, isolated incidences. But at the end of the day, the bigger we get, the more vehicles we have to move. We pay our carriers. I'm sure you guys have talked to this with David and Dan on the carrier side. If they do what they're supposed to do and do the paperwork, use our app and get that thing completed, they're paid in their bank in 2 days. We pay extra. We have a rapid pay right now. And unlike some other companies, we don't charge them an enormous amount of VIG to do it. We charge them 1% to get their money immediately. And that 1% is doing nothing more than covering the transaction costs. It's not making AutoSled any money. So we take care of our carriers. We provide work. We're sensitive. With my regulars, I provide work that keeps them home on a relatively regular basis. And we'll advocate for them, right? As much as a carrier has been wrong, a dealer has been wrong. As much as a dealer has been wrong and a carrier has been wrong, an auction's been wrong about a fair assessment on a vehicle, right? So I think the most important thing is that we stop, we pause, which I'm horrible at, right? And then we try to get all the details together, right? I want to see the dealer's pictures. I want to see the condition pictures on pickup. I want to see Manheim, if it's any auction, it's not just Manheim. If it's any auction, I want to see, the condition report, right? And then we're going to put it together. Because as we all know, when something gets damaged, a lot of finger pointing can occur. And, it's not always the carrier's fault. It's not always the auction's fault. It's not always the dealer's fault. We just want to make sure that, we want to fix the problem as quick as possible, right? because being founded by two guys that were born into the car business, right? Having a non-saleable unit, wondering where the check from the insurance company is, and having something sit and dwell where you're paying floor plan on it is not a recipe for a positive statement, right? So I think really the biggest things when it comes to any of these circumstances is that we have a team that is involved in trying to get closure for whomever that needs to be closure for as quick as humanly possible. Right? We've had dealers come back to us after a vehicle sitting on lot for weeks. We have a signed bill of lading that said the vehicle is accepted in good condition and somebody damaged it on the lot and they're coming back to us. Mm-hmm. So, at the end of the day, right, we just want to make sure that everybody's treated fairly and, nobody's always wrong and nobody's always right.
Yeah. Sounds like Bill Vaughn agrees. Treat everyone like partners and not vendors, and that's clients, right. And everyone will be better off.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks for that, Bill. So Bart, as we're getting near the top of the hour here, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd love to share?
Listen, since I have the open air opportunity, I would be remiss if I didn't want to put in a tremendous plug for the AutoSled organization. I'll make a really fast plug that's not too awful. I think the important message for anybody that is or isn't using AutoSled currently is, we've built a field organization so that in many parts of the country we have human beings that are in your stores, right? We are not some ethereal internet company with people that you never see, right? We're in your dealerships. We want to know you. We want to know your business. We want to help you logistically, right? Our platform is tremendously easy to use. If you sign on and you want to partner with us as we want to partner with you, there is no subscription fee. There are no friendship dues. You will use us, and you'll love using AutoSled. And if you don't love us, you can leave us, right? But there's no 10-year contract. There's no nothing. I promise you that our extremely overgrown sense of urgency and customer service will be a breath of fresh air for all of your transportation logistics needs. And that's for the dealers, that's for the franchise, the independents, and certainly on anybody in the OEM side. We've been very successful partnering, and we want to grow that side of the business. And the best part of us is we understand what it's like for a field organization to have their dealers screaming at their field rep, that scream at their area general manager, that scream at their regional general manager, that scream at their RVP, that scream at headquarters about where are our cars, right? And we want to solve those pain points, no matter how short or long the haul is. We want to do that. So that's the plug for us. I'm reachable 7 days a week as much as I don't want to be, but I'm going to be reactive to my customers' needs. If you didn't notice, on top of my head, I don't answer the phone Saturday between 11 and 2, but outside of that, I'm fair game. I go to bed early, but I'm up early. Now, looking ahead, I from my dealer partners and certainly from some things I see coming on the other side of the business, I think March is going to be a very good car month for the industry. A lot of our dealers that do a lot of extensive auction purchases have been ramping up very steadily through the end of this month. I know we get the bonus day because of the leap year this year, but the February everybody kind of contracts and hides away. February started well for us. We had a week where it settled a bit, but I think it's certainly moving in a wonderful trajectory. I think we'll finish the month out from a volume perspective. Certainly, where we wanted to be and where we projected to be, other than the insane goal of too much is never enough. But that goes back to my prior point. If there's more people that want a total automotive partner logistics solution, then, the more of you that ring me after this call, the more people will help grow the business together. But I'm looking to a good car year. I'm even looking at some of the new product that's coming out. There's some really good product in market now. And there's really some good mid-year model turns and model changes that are coming in across many manufacturers that are going to draw a lot of attention to the showrooms. I think we're still in a new car position of having one too few than one too many with many manufacturers. And I think that that's going to serve our auto dealer or serve our dealer partners very well as far as a profit perspective. And then I think if there's any uncertainty for me in the market, I don't care. I'll be shipping them as much as I can. I think the eye is still on what's going on in the EV world. Some of the big three are making some dramatic moves. The infrastructure to support the type of market share that's being demanded is not there. I think if there's something that I'd be watching this year and for the years to come that concerns me a little bit would be, what's up with that.
Agreed.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that's a good note to end on, Bart. Thank you.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you guys making some time for me today. It's a pleasure to get to know a little bit more about the both of you prior to the call. Alex, a guy like you, if you move to Nashville, you want to live in a neighborhood called the Nations. That will give you everything you need. And Jeff, you're just going to suffer with me around the Beltway, and that's what we're going to do.
I've been trying to get the hell out of this area.
Hey, the least I can say is come to Virginia. Our property taxes are half.
Yeah, I'll pass.
It wasn't a recruiting effort.
I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so
everyone,
much,
John. Guys.
Have a good weekend.
Absolutely. Yep.
And
thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
We will be taking next Friday off to give everyone their month-end closeout.
And to all the dealers out there, I wish you a strong and healthy close.
Yes.
Thank you.
Crush it.
All right.
Have a great day, guys.